And welcome back to Subculture. Well, there is a very special show on right now in Melbourne called The Waiting Room, and we thought we want to know a little bit more about this show, so we thought with today we would actually get Ellen, Fiona, and Laura all on the phone at the one time to chat about this amazing new production. So welcome to the show, everybody.
Morning. Thank you for having us.
So I was wondering if someone would like to start off by telling us a little bit about The Waiting Room. What can people expect to see if they head along to this great show?
Sure, I'll take that one. People can expect a collection of monologues that are exploring what it might mean to be accounting for your life to the big man upstairs. So what's your final confession or your final conversation and what it feels like to be judged.
So how did the idea first come about for this show? Was it something that popped up that made you all think that this would work as a show, or how did the idea come together in the first place?
So Fiona and I were having discussions on what our next project would be, and we saw the Monologue Festival pop up, and we thought, oh, that could be a really great opportunity to sort of give each of us, all of the actors involved, an opportunity to create our own piece and, explore writing our own work. And so we wanted there to be a collective theme, and we were discussing, the idea of being caught out or kind of what's the worst thing you've ever done, and everyone has a story. And so it sort of started there, and then we were speaking to our friend Amelia, who's also part of the show, and we all sort of came up with this concept of end of the world. If, this is your last chance, what are you going to say? What's the summation of your life, or what's the thing that you've been carrying throughout it? And yeah, it's worked out really well. Yeah.
So, Ellen, tell us a little bit about how do you approach this project as a director? Because, of course, it's different to a lot of theatre that people will have seen in the past. How do you approach a theatre production like this that's made up of monologues?
Yeah, I think I wanted to look at finding a way to explore what's similar about the different characters and what's different, because they're all in the same world to an extent. They've all got the same task ahead of them of trying to convince somebody of their worth or their goodness or whatever it is that they choose to present. And so it's sort of about how are these different characters approaching this task. Some of them are going with it, some of them are perhaps resisting the assignment and the structure. And then I was also really curious, or I wanted to think about how to theatrically create the presence of God in the room, because as much as, yes, they're monologues and they're predominantly one person speaking, it's about who they're speaking to and how does that person interact with them. So we have the beautiful Rory, who is the presence of the deity in the room. But I definitely wanted to perhaps not present what would be expected in a monologue festival and just have one actor on stage the whole time. So we're looking at how we use the space differently, even though it's one speaker.
Yeah. Fiona, Laura, I guess this question's for you, but when you first sat down to work on your monologues, how did you approach it? Did you decide to take things from your personal life? Did you decide to create a character from scratch? How did you actually go about that first initial steps of sitting down and writing the monologue?
I think for me, it kind of started somewhere and ended up somewhere completely different. I think when we first came up with the concept, we were all quite excited by it, and we all had an idea of what we wanted to write. But then and a lot of that originally came from personal experience and stories that we knew that were either funny or tragic or, all of this sort of stuff. But as part of the writing process, that develops into maybe not something completely different, although it was on my side, but it develops into a story about a character. So kind of that was the process. And we had an amazing dramaturg, Tuya Suter, who worked through each of our pieces with us to make sure that they all sit together and they've all got a structure. And she was amazing. So that's how it came together for me, certainly.
I was really excited to see how far I could push this piece. So I went on Reddit and looked up what's the worst thing you've ever done, and that gave me a lot of inspiration. It was quite an interesting read. But I sort of went from there, and then I suppose again, like Fiona, it started in one place and ended in another, but it was such a fun process.
I have to ask now, what were some of the things you discovered on Reddit? Because Reddit is a radio show's absolute dream when you're going for a topic. What was some of the worst things that you found?
I wish I had one, like, very specific story. I don't. I just know there was a lot of, sleeping with my brother's wife and things happening at weddings, and it was just that kind of thing. Just shitting on people's doorsteps, and
Laura, Fiona, also from a performance point of view, what is it like getting up and doing a monologue? Of course, because with regular theatre, you normally are bouncing off somebody all the time. What is it like getting up and doing a monologue? Because I remember for me, when I was doing my VCE Cats, the monologue was the most daunting that I did.
I think the thing that's most challenging is placing the person that you're speaking to, and making sure that you're speaking to someone, whether it's the audience or a person or something ethereal in the sky. I think it's been made easier for us by the fact that we all know who we're speaking to. It's some sort of celestial being, and having an actual voice and a person behind that has made it easier because we can interact with that quite closely. So, and I think, the way that Ellen has directed it has also made it really easy for us to actually be speaking to a presence, which brings a lot of reality to the situation.
Definitely. Ellen, as a director, what was that like for you when the different monologues started to come in, like as people had finished theirs? What was that like for you, going over them and reading through each of them?
I actually, made an effort to not read them too much before we got in the room. I really wanted to see them as the actors had been imagining them, because they were writing their own work. I wanted to be like, cool, like how is it that they're presenting it? How is it that they're imagining this occurs in space? So it was really exciting to turn up basically on day one and be like, cool, what even are these going to be? Because I knew what the concept was and I'd heard bits and pieces, and then I got to come in on the day and be delighted and surprised by the different ways that everyone had responded to the concept. And then they've just developed from there. People have refined them as we've rehearsed and tweaked things to make it tighter, which is kind of the joy of always having the writer in the room, is that you discover maybe something's not landing, or you have a revelation about the character, and then they've been able to go away and make those changes as we work, which means that the pieces that we're presenting, I think, are really well developed and very thoroughly processed. Yeah.
Definitely. Now, I guess this is one for all of you. What do you hope that people take away from the waiting room?
I'll go first. I hope that people reflect on or move away with this, being more aware of how we decide who gets to judge people in our society, because I think that we don't necessarily question where a judgment is coming from and who is doing the judging, and how that interacts with who is being judged. I think we have a lot of ideas about who deserves what that might be might not have been meditated on enough. And I think that's a way that we can make sure we're showing up more compassionately for each other, is when we notice ourselves judging someone. Why? Why is it that we've decided that we even get to do that?
Yeah, and I think kind of similar to that, it's the kind of personal journey with just those so like those things that you expect or that you have that are systemically in society. Sorry, my words are failing me. Those things that are kind of ingrained in you. This is bad. This is good, and to challenge that, and to challenge, what is actually serving you in life, as opposed to, what is being put in place in those systems to tell you you're bad and good, and to really challenge that.
Yeah, I think it would be a really beautiful thing, for the audience to go away and reflect on perhaps what they would say if they were in that position, but also quite amazing if they came into the show perhaps thinking one thing and then leaving and being able to reassess the things that they've been carrying themselves and think, maybe give themselves a bit more kindness and forgive themselves and move on in the world with that.
Definitely. Now, for all of our listeners out there, if you are wanting to head along and check out the waiting room, it is on at the Butterfly Club right now, which is in Carson Place in Melbourne. It's on 8:30 each night, and you can grab tickets from the Butterfly Club website. And of course, if you go to our website, there will be a link there as well where you can grab tickets from. I guess to finish off, what would you all like to say to people out there who are thinking about grabbing tickets and heading along to the waiting room?
Bring your friends.
Bring your friends. And if you're thinking that the subject matter sounds a bit heavy, it is, but it's also a very funny series of monologues, so you'll have a good time.
Awesome. Yeah. And again, for all of our listeners out there, if you want to head along and check out the waiting room, it is on at the Butterfly Club right now, which is in Carson Place in Melbourne, 8:30 every night, and tickets are available right now from the Butterfly Club website. Well, I want to thank you all for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute privilege having you on the show, and I've got to say, I cannot wait to be able to come along and see this show because I know it is going to be absolutely fantastic.